Next week never came. For years I told myself I'd start fresh next week, but next week never came. I used to tell myself that next week would be different. Next week I'd wake up early. Next week I'd be productive. Next week I'd finally take care of myself. But next week never came. My days didn't start when the world woke up. By the time most people were having lunch, I was dragging myself out of bed after yet another night of depression-fueled insomnia. I'd finally pass out around 5:30 a.m. after watching Murder, She Wrote, Heart to Heart, and Matlock. Not because I loved them, but because they were predictable comfort in a life that felt anything but. When I finally got up, my husband, who worked from home, would make us lunch. He was hours into his day, working and moving forward while I was just starting mine. And by starting, I mean existing. Eating lunch, calling it a win, laying around until dinner. Pain dictated everything. Walking hurt. Standing in line was torture. If I had to wait anywhere, I'd rock back and forth just to shift the weight between my failing joints. Doctors said knee replacement was my only option, but I convinced myself that surgery would be worse than the pain I already lived with. So I stayed in my loop. Medications, fast food, TV, sleep, repeat. I was 70 pounds heavier. I was on the verge of needing blood pressure meds and drowning in prescriptions. The only thing that got me out of the house was picking up more medications. And I told myself that this was just life now, a never-ending cycle of survival. The moment it hit me. One day, I emptied the dishwasher. That was it. That was my biggest achievement of the week. I told my husband, "Hey, I emptied the dishwasher today." And bless him, he smiled and said, "That's great, honey." But deep down, I knew. I knew this wasn't living. I knew this wasn't how life was supposed to feel. Still, I kept telling myself, next week, I'll start fresh. Next week, I'll fix everything. Next week, I'll finally become the person I keep dreaming about. But next week never came. The moment I turned to cannabis, I didn't wake up one day and magically decide to change my life. It was a slow realization, a series of small, painful moments that made me see I couldn't keep living like this. I was sick of waiting for next week. When I first turned to cannabis, I was hesitant. I had spent years taking whatever prescriptions doctors handed me, numbing myself in ways that only made me feel further away from the person I wanted to be. But cannabis? It didn't numb me. It opened me up. It gave me the mental space to see the patterns I was stuck in. It softened the sharp edges of my pain just enough so that movement didn't feel impossible. And it finally quieted the constant anxiety that had kept me trapped in the cycle of waiting. Was it an instant fix? No. But it was the first real step I took toward reclaiming my life. Why I'm sharing this? I know I'm not alone in this. Maybe you're watching this right now telling yourself, next week will be different. Maybe you feel stuck, exhausted, and unsure where to even begin. I get it. I was you. This is part of my journey, one that eventually led me to cannabis as a tool for healing. But before I could move forward, I had to acknowledge the cycle I was stuck in. The first step toward change isn't a massive overhaul. The first step is recognizing where you are. The first step is today. Curious about how cannabis could help you break free from the cycle? Let's talk. Looking for a way to track your own journey? Download my weed diary and start documenting what works for you. Want to stay connected? Subscribe to get my next post straight to your inbox. Have you ever felt like you were waiting for life to start? Drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Healing doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen.